What is up, guys? Welcome to today's video where the Minnesota Wild traded Charlie Coyle to the Boston Bruins for a conditional 5th round pick and Ryan Donato. The condition on that pick being that if the Boston Bruins should end up in the second round of this playoff, which, let's be honest, is a thing that easily could happen, that pick gets moved up to a 4th round. And it was on this day the Minnesota Wild finally started the rebuild. And my initial thoughts about this? I'm not against this at all. I think it's a good trade for both teams. I think both teams get something they desperately need. And while it saddens me to lose Charlie Coyle because he has been a good player, he's been a really classy part of the Minnesota Wild for a long time, and he's been a good part to the community of Minnesota. He's a really good guy in the locker room, in the background, and on the off ice, and he's a fine player on the ice as well. But we've been screaming for the rebuild. We've been screaming to try something new, to change the settings, to try and change what we have, and this is the start of that. Look at it this way. This is the start of the rebuild, where we start to focus on what comes when Kaprizov joins the squad. What should we do? Look at what rebuilders do. They trade core players that plays regularly, that's NHL caliber, to teams that's trying to push for a playoff run. We did that for Charlie Coyle, for picks, which again makes sense. That could easily become a decent pick. 4th rounders are always iffy, but you can get something out of it. And a young guy with a scoring touch who needs to prove himself in the NHL a little bit, but has definitely the potential to become just as good as Charlie Coyle, in my opinion. We're rebuilders now. Plain and simple, we are rebuilding the Minnesota Wild from the ground up. And it's gonna be a process, and you're gonna see players you would not like to see move, potentially all for less than you would like to see move. But part of being in a rebuild is being able to see the fact that you have to focus on the youth and the picks, and sometimes that hinders you in the short terms, and you have to get rid of a guy like Charlie Coyle, who is a fine player. Now, let's go through what the Boston Bruins get and go through what Charlie Coyle was to the Minnesota Wild. Boston fans, you got a good player. You got a really good depth forward, and I think he's a perfect top 9 player. He's gritty, he's strong, he's in there, and he has a decent vision for the game. He knows what he's doing on the ice. However, the one part where I think he failed a little bit with the Minnesota Wild was his scoring touch. I don't think he's a goal scorer. If that's what you're getting him for, you have made a mistake, because that's not what Charlie Coyle is about. He's about being that depth scoring assist maker, playmaker, finding guys for maybe Heinen. I could see that happening. Maybe DeBrusk, maybe Backus. There is definitely a lot of grit to him, and it fits the style that the Boston Bruins have perfectly, in my opinion. But he never really worked with the Minnesota Wild, because he always was, in my opinion, compared unfairly to the trade we made for him. For those who doesn't know, we traded Brent Burns to the San Jose Sharks for David Sadaguchi and Charlie Coyle. Yeah, we can all hear how that is going, right? But Charlie Coyle, in his own right, is a fine player. He has a lot of upside. He has a lot of strength to him, and he's gonna be able to be a real player of asset, I think, in terms of that style, where he can be that pesky annoyance that kind of takes over for when a Marchand is off the ice. And he's such a classic guy as well off the ice. As I mentioned, he's done a lot for the community, he's done a lot for the state of Minnesota. He has done a lot of things that just rings around the area, and on Twitter you see a lot of Minnesota guys praise him for his work rate, always being there, always being able to see the fans. And that's something that is not to be underestimated, in my opinion. Having a guy that's a great locker room guy that is able to connect with fans, that is definitely important. That gives you that kind of confidence in this player, and I think Charlie Coyle will do that for the Boston Bruins. And if he can tip in and make the Boston Bruins go into the second round, yes please, Charlie, do that for Minnesota. Now, what does the Minnesota Wild get? Well, we get a 4th or 5th rounder. That's sometimes good, sometimes bad. That we've seen with some picks that we made. We have Kaprizov as a 5th round pick, so sometimes you can hit the right kind of player, and sometimes you hit a player where it's, oh, okay, that was a miss, but there is a chance that it could work out to be a top 9, maybe a bottom 6 guy, which is fine if you add on that we can get Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato has played a few games and has a few points for the Boston Bruins this season. However, he has been a little bit underused, in my opinion, and I think being 21, 22, he's definitely still have a future ahead of him. He hasn't peaked at all. So if we can make him that kind of player where he maybe plays with a Greenway, X, something like that. Maybe Conan. Maybe put him on the first line, see how he flies with that. Maybe if you need to see where he can go, try to put him in the AHL, see what he does there. But we definitely have him as a potential to be a top 6 sniper, maybe on the line behind a Kaprizov. And if he develops that, I see this as a great trade for the Minnesota Wild. A great trade for Boston, a great trade for Minnesota. This is one of those, there isn't a loser in my opinion to this trade. There's 2 winners, there's two teams who get what they want. We get youth, we get a goal scorer, at least on paper we get a goal scorer who is able to have that NHL kind of caliber shot that we've been looking for. And even with Kaprizov, we need more people to have it. He might become that. The upside of Ryan Deneau is great. He needs to prove it, but if he can, we have something there. And as I said, this starts to rebuild completely. Now we have a lot of other players who's on the block. You could see players now be moved more frequently. A Stahl potentially. Spurgeon is potentially going to move at some point. Dubnyk. We aren't in this position to keep the elder guys anymore. We've basically gone from trying really hard and making deals for Hansel for a first rounder where we've sacrificed the future a little bit to try and say, okay, we might not be a playoff team for the next 2 seasons. We might not be for 3 seasons. We're trying to figure out how to make the Minnesota Wild better for the future. And this trade is a part of that because you can't change now. Charlie Coyle is 26 years old. He isn't that old in terms of veteran leadership. However, he is kind of getting into his prime. You don't sell prime player if you won't rebuild. And that is what I see the Minnesota Wild do today. Starting the rebuild. They kind of hinted at it when they traded Niederreiter. That was a bad trade, by the way, but still, we hinted at maybe this is time to get the generation change, get the new guys, try and say this call won't do it. We need a new call. Let's see what we can do. This trade, in my opinion, is a much more clearer hint at that, and clearer hint at what direction of the Minnesota Wild will be, and also a much clearer indication at, I think, what style we're looking for. And on paper, this is the best that Fenton has done, in my opinion, as a Minnesota Wild general manager. Before I end it, I will have another video coming in probably around 5-6 hours from this going up, where I'm going to talk a little bit about the trade deadline for the Minnesota line. Who should go? Who should we keep? Who is the protectables? Who is untradables? Who is the guys that we should be looking to sell? And that's going to be like a probably longer video where I'm going to literally go through teams and names and try and figure out who should go where and why that makes sense. To Charlie Coyle, thank you very much for your time with the Minnesota Wild. You've done admirably. Sadly, it didn't work out as well as I think any of us had hoped for. And you got compared unfairly, in my opinion, to Brett Burns. However, best of luck in Boston. I think you are going to have a great time there and go get us a 4th round pick.